congratulations for signing up. You've proved to yourself that you want to make a true difference in your life, and you're willing to take the extra steps to make sure that whatever process you're going into is going to cover all your bases and make something for your life that is 100% sustainable and is ideal for your body type, your goals, and your desired lifestyle. So not a lot of people, there's still a lot of people in the world looking for the quick fix. You've proven to yourself and to me that you're looking for something better. And I can promise you, over the next set of videos, the series that we're going to go through with the 6 pillars, first of all, there's going to be a lot of information. I would recommend you get something out so that you can start jotting down some notes, because especially in today's, but all the other sessions, I'm going to be talking about things that are truly going to get you to where you want to go. This stuff is, I've used it with thousands and thousands of people, and it's very powerful, and you're going to see that not only to grasp short-term gains, but to really make a sustainable lifestyle that involves being more athletic, living an active or an athletic lifestyle. This is the way to do it. So again, congratulations for signing up. I'm super happy you're here, and we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to get right into things, and we're talking today about Pillar 1. So Pillar 1 is about target, focus, and mindset, as you can see on the board. And you'll see with a lot of programs that are at the very least trying to make sure that people engage in something that's sustainable. You hear a lot of talk about before you get into anything. And this isn't just fitness. This is, anything in your life. You really want to adopt it and be long-term successful with it. It starts with why you're doing it. So for me, this is mindset. And we're going to go a little deeper into setting up a proper set of whys, because just the regular, why you're doing it, I've seen over the years, isn't quite enough to carry you for the long term. Although it's extremely powerful and it's extremely important, we're going to talk about it in a second. There are a few steps that you have to take to ensure the sustainability of this and the long-term success. So when we talk about your mindset, so we're going to talk about mindset first, and we'll talk about target and focus after. When we talk about your mindset, what this truly is your emotional why. A lot of times when I sit with clients for a preliminary meeting to see if what they're looking for and what's going on, I often dig into why this is important to them. And I tell people, if they're not really super emotional at that time when they're talking about their why it's important for them, then their chances of success are very little. Because you need to have some sort of compelling reason that you're going to come across obstacles through this process, just like everybody does. And instead of viewing them as obstacles, if you're going to view them as challenges to overcome and not beat yourself up for feeling like you failed, you need to have a compelling why. And it'll also drive you on the days that you really don't feel like training, or things are really busy and it's hard to fit everything into your schedule. It takes a lot of effort sometimes to do these things, especially on a continuing basis. If you're multiple jobs or a really busy, dedicated job and family life and social life and all of these other things you're trying to fit in, you're trying to be healthy. Sometimes at periods of the year, it can be very time consuming. And you really have to have a compelling reason why you're going to continue on. So super important to set up your mindset. This is your emotional why. And I'll give you an example. My emotional why I do this is or why I train on a regular basis myself is one of the most compelling reasons is to lead by example for my kids and my family and my extended family. To really be able to show people that this sort of lifestyle is sustainable, you can create something that's very reasonable, and that, you know, it's all worth it in the end, and it's not really, it's never going to take away from my life. All it does is add to my life. And with that mindset, I actually don't have to, talk to them about making sure they get involved and making sure that everything, they're doing all the things they're supposed to do. I just lead by example by training on a regular basis, and if anybody ever has questions, especially within my family, my kids, then I answer all their questions, and that builds a curiosity in them, and it builds them into living an active and healthy lifestyle. So my suggestion to you for mindset, we won't talk about this a lot because there's a ton of information online about, getting into the right emotional mindset for things, but you need to write out a sentence or two that describes truly why this is important to you and why it will shift from I should do workout today or I should train on a regular basis to I must. And that's what you really want your why to do for you is I have to do this. This is part of what I'm trying to achieve. This is a core value that I carry. And I'm not going to miss this because it's an absolute must that I do this. Okay, to live the values that I want and to be able to be in the right mindset and overcome the challenges when they arise, because they will. This sentence that you're going to write, or a couple of sentences that you're going to write and print out and have available in your gym space or something like that, somewhere where when you're struggling to motivate yourself, that you can read this and remind yourself of why you must do it and what's important to you, then write that out and make sure you have it available. Now, the other two things that we're going to talk about today are targeted focus. These are really the things that I see lacking in almost all programs, exercise, health programs. They might talk a little bit about, your emotional why, but target is your why, as in your mechanical why. Like, what are you trying to get out of this? There's too much in the fitness and health industry. There's too much of this. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get stronger. These are all very, very vague statements. You need to hone this down to something that's really targeted, really centers around what kind of person, lifestyle, body type, abilities, what do you want to get out of all of this work? Because a lot of people, they'll do a ton of work and then they get to, not the end, there's not, to be healthy long term, there's no real end, but they train on a regular basis and then they don't have the right target, they're not getting the right goals, they're not feeling great about themselves. Eventually you just stop doing it. Whereas if you have the right target, then it's, again, another huge motivating factor for you to keep training on a regular basis. So I'll give you a couple examples. The way I walk through with my clients is, what kind of athlete do you picture yourself being? So this is for if you've never done any exercise in your life and you're just sort of adopting this, or you're at the at the cusp of being an elite athlete and you want to make sure that you're focusing on exactly what's going to get you to the next level and also keep you balanced and keep you free of injuries. So when you look at what types of athlete are around, you can generally look at sports if you want, if that's something that you're into. You want to have the endurance of a soccer player, mental toughness of a rugby player, or be as agile and have the burst speed of a hockey player or a track athlete. You can pick a quasi category like that, but you need to take it a little step farther, and you can divide it up, and you can write this down. You can divide it up into a bunch of little categories. of things that you need to work on. So, and the categories I'm talking about are things like, you want to be more flexible? Do you want to be stronger? Like, your ability to push and pull and lift things in, something that takes less than 5 or 10 seconds. You want to have that kind of strength. Do you want to have muscular endurance? Do you want to be able to work for periods of 2 or 3 minutes where you're exerting force, and even though there's, you feel the muscle burn and you can fight through the fatigue. You want to have the type of endurance to be able to fight through the fatigue. Or do you want to have the type of endurance where you're going to run 10K or be able to cycle 40 or 80K or do some sort of distance training? Because those different types of muscular endurance and distance endurance are trained very differently. So what kind of athlete do you want to be in that way? Do you want to be more agile? Do you want to be faster? And if you say you want to be faster, do you want to be faster like you can, sprint 100 meters really fast, or do a sprint on a bike or anything like that, or rowing or swimming? Or do you want to be faster as in have better reflexes? Because again, these two types of training for speed are very different, and require different time allotments to be able to get good at them. The other thing is, when we look at all of these different things, not everybody can train for everything. Because if you're going to do that, that would mean if you've already set aside 2 to 4 hours a day of training, and if you've already done that, chances are you're already working with a coach and you're on track to be an elite athlete or an Olympic athlete. I'm going to guess if you're watching this video, you're probably not in that category, but you're in the category of wanting to learn how to train properly and wanting to get to the right place for you, for your body type. So of all of those things, of flexibility, strength, speed, agility, you need to decide what kind of attributes you want to have so that you can decide, so that I can help you decide later on what kind of training you should be doing. Okay, so that's your target. Your target is, what type of athlete do you see yourself being in the future? And there is no wrong answer. If you want to be a big, strong athlete that maybe doesn't ever run 400s or run 5 kilometers, that's totally fine. It's your decision. And the reverse is true. You want to be able to run marathons. That's totally fine as well. The real trick to long-term success is whatever target you pick, is having a head coach like me, to help you, guide you through to make sure that you stay balanced, and the type of training or the type of target that you pick isn't going to create complete imbalances in your body and eventually lead to failure because you get injured. Okay? So working on what type of target is extremely important. And like I said, this is your emotional why, and this is your mechanical why, like what we're working on. Focus, this is the stuff that I teach early on in the program, which is obviously why it's in Pillar 1. But it's the things you need to be focusing on when you're training. So there's a bunch of parameters that I set to make sure that people are training properly and decreasing the incidence of injury or the risk of injury. Now, one of the biggest ones and one of the most important things, and one of the things that my athletes hear me say all the time, is work the weakest link. You have to be working the weakest link all the time. So what's happening in a lot of programs now is just they're given an exercise and they're told, do as many repetitions of this exercise as possible in a given amount of time, without further instruction on what the weakest link is or what to focus on. These are why people are getting injured. And probably if you've been in training for any length of time, maybe recognize that people are doing some sort of strengthening exercises often, or powerlifting or whatever, and the technique is just horrible, but they're just trying to get that last repetition in. This is a recipe for disaster. This is why so many of those programs are injuring so many people, and you need to make sure that you're focused on the right thing. So I'm going to give you an example of the right focus and working the weakest link. One of the first things that I teach, and we'll talk more about in Pillar 2, is what position to put your back in. What position you should be working in, to make sure that your back doesn't get injured. How to brace it properly. What you should feel in your feet, center of gravity of your feet. And I teach that. It's something that I call the Big Three. I teach that early on, and it is the major focus for the beginning part of the training. Is if they can't negotiate the Big Three, something starts to break down, then whatever exercise that I'm giving them is too hard. Because I pair it with another rule that I use, which is part of our focus, is the rule of 3. If you have more than 3 things that you legitimately need to concentrate on to get this exercise right, if there's more than 3 of them, then it's too much. There's too many things going on. There's too many variables, because the variables, if you move one thing, it affects 10 other things. So if you're having to concentrate on 4, 5, 6 things at the same time, and multiply that by all of the effects that's going to happen to your body, this again a recipe to get injured. And if you're concentrating on one thing and it's not your back, you're concentrating on how your arm's moving through a pushing mechanism, and you're not concentrating on your Big Three, or you haven't given yourself time to get used to it, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And as things get more stressful and you start training harder, then it's it multiplies that risk of injury. So what I focus on is the Big Three at the beginning, and what happens is, and how you get more skillful over time, which is really becoming more athletic, is you get comfortable with the Big Three, how to position your back, you get really good at it. You don't have to concentrate on it as much. Now, how much time does that take? How much adaptation time do we allow? So this is the next thing that I talk to people about. And I know this is probably like a little bit of information overload, lots of things to concentrate on, but you'll get used to them over time. This is what I tell my athletes. All of these things are rule of 3, work the weakest link, and the stuff I'm just about to talk about. That's a lot of things to concentrate on already. Give yourself time. If you're constantly working the weakest link, then things will get easier over time. So the next thing that I tell people is, what sort of expectation do you have for progress? And it's something that I call the 500-5,000 rule. If you're learning a movement for the very first time, you're learning how to control your lower back. So that's like positioning, when I talk about positioning your lower back, it's arching and rounding and finding that ideal position to work your lower back. And for some people, just standing here, I can position my lower back. But as soon as there's stress on the body, their ability to reposition their lower back sort of disappears. Well, what we want to do is put you in a scenario where you can just, make those adjustments, and you're programming it into your brain to make those adjustments. And if you've never done this movement before, typically if you repeat this 500 times, then your brain creates a pathway for that movement, which is a reflex. And now, as a reflex, you have to concentrate much less on finding that appropriate position for whatever it is you're trying to learn, because it's developed into a reflex. Now, if you've trained a lot in the past and you have lots of poor movement patterns, this is where the 5,000 rule comes in. So if you have an engram or a pathway in your brain that is a set movement, and we just need to change that set movement a little bit, we need to make a little alteration to something that you already know, it can take up to 5,000 repetitions to make that change, to create that new pathway or reconstruct a pathway in your brain. So all of that, and why I tell people this is, take your time. Don't get frustrated about not, being good at an exercise. You might do an exercise one day and, through 3 or 4 or 5 sets, you're getting better and better at the exercise movement-wise, even if you're getting tired, because your body, your brain has figured out an alternate pathway to create that movement. And then what your brain does actually is increases the amount of chemicals through that alternate pathway to make you feel more comfortable with the movement. The problem with that is if you've only done 25 or 60 repetitions, you come back the next time you train and it's a little weird again. That's because you have to give your brain time to reconstruct a real pathway that is reflex driven. Okay, so I know it's a lot of information today and mostly intellectual, and I know you want to get started right away. So before you get started, you have to work on this stuff. This is don't just drop this video and say to yourself you're going to work on it a little bit later. You need to spend a little bit of time working on these 3 things right away. So your mindset, getting emotionally, why is this important to you? Why is this taking this from I should train, or I should dedicate more time to training, to I must train, I must dedicate more time to training. Your target, what kind of athlete do you picture? What kind of athlete do you want to be? What kind of abilities do you want to have when you start, even if you're in I just want to lose some weight, but for what purpose? You want to lose weight so that you are more mobile, typically, more stronger, healthier, have more endurance. It's never just paired with I want to lose weight. So picture yourself a year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What kind of athlete, what kind of abilities do you want to be able to have, to be able to perform, so that we can guide you to specifically what kind of training you should be doing. Okay? And then the focus. The most important thing you'll ever do is work the weakest link. And I'll give you one more example. Oftentimes when I train with athletes early on, we start doing exercises. I don't use hand assistance for anything, so wraps or anything like that. And oftentimes I work with belts or ropes, that sort of stuff. And in the first few weeks or even months, we'll be doing an exercise, and let's say it's a core exercise, and you're supposed to be training to stabilize your rib cage to your pelvis, so it's a lot of ab work and all that sort of stuff. But the biggest complaints we get, so I have this STAR exercise that I call STAR. It's holding a cable from the side, so you're supposed to be working the chain out here. But with the amount of resistance that we're using, the first thing that gets tired is their hand. It's well, I don't feel it in my abs, and I don't feel it, where I should be feeling it. And my answer to that is, actually, you are, because the weakest link is your hand. And that's fine, because to be truly athletic over time, a very strong indicator of athleticism, depending on the type, but especially strength-driven athletes, is hand strength. And you need to be working on this. And if it's your hand is the thing that gets the most tired the quickest, don't worry about it. Your hand will get stronger over time as you apply more exercises and allow your forearms to develop and get stronger. And that is the weakest link, okay? So work the weakest link. Understand the 500, 5,000 rule, that it's going to take a little bit of time. If you're getting frustrated with an exercise, you want to get better at it, then work out the math to 5, especially if it's a movement you're trying to correct. Work out the math. How many sets and reps do you have to do to get to your 5,000 or even exceed 5,000 repetitions? That can give you a better idea of, okay, you know what, it's okay, I'll just be a couple of weeks, and in a couple of weeks I'll have all my repetitions in, and it'll start getting easier. Okay, so definitely focusing on that. And the rule of 3. If I send you an exercise, there's a whole bunch of information in the exercise video. There are some preliminary things you need to pay attention to, which you'll know once we get into it a little bit farther. But your big three is going to be one of them, and if all you can concentrate is on your big three and you can't do the exercise fully, work the weakest link, work on your big three, it will get stronger, and then everything else, you'll build a solid foundation and everything else will get stronger. Okay? I'd love to hear your comments and questions about this. I know there was a ton of information there. If you're looking to just start doing some exercise right away, and you haven't trained much, just start doing some basic cardio. And one of the first things that you should be doing is carving out the time to train. So it doesn't really matter what you do. I mean, don't go, if you've never lifted or if you've never done skills training before, don't, go and try and lift a whole bunch of weight or anything like that. But carve out the time by doing cardio and flexibility, or some of the things that won't get you injured, or maybe some of the things you've done in the past that are effective for you. Because carving out the time is going to help us decide as well, from the type of athlete you want to be, how realistic is it, how much time do you actually have, and how do we build a plan that is going to be sustainable for the rest of your life. Okay? So I'd love to hear your comments and questions. Again, congratulations for signing up. This is a very good pathway, and it's a pathway that I've used with thousands of athletes before. And if you truly want to be successful long term, then make sure you implement everything that we're talking about right away. Don't wait. Go and write down your things right now, so that when the next video comes out, we can start progressing forward and building on everything that you've learned today. Okay? Have a great day, and as always, be active, be healthy, and be injury free.